Well, good morning and welcome to the first live, frankly speaking, of 2025. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We have so much to cover. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the tragedy in New Orleans from over the yesterday. We're going to talk about the Tesla truck exploding in front of Trump Towers in Las Vegas. We also have an update on the speaker's race. As you know, the speaker's race starts anyway. I'm not going to say commences. Starts tomorrow. We'll be discussing that as well, and a couple things here about Trump and a couple things here about Biden. First off, let's go to some viewer comments from the last program that we had. This coming in yesterday. Happy New Year, Frank. Well, Happy New Year. Thank you. Here's hoping to a much better year once Biden and Harris are out of there. Thank you very much for that comment. And thank you to everybody sending in so many nice, like this one. Good morning. Happy New Year to you. Well, Happy New Year to you, too. Thank you for all of those comments that came in. We won't read all of them, but Happy New Year to everyone out there watching, frankly speaking. This coming in after Tuesday's program. We talked a lot about the bureaucracy. Actually, we focused a lot on New York State issues, as a matter of fact, on Tuesday, which was about the climate change superfund, taxing fossil fuel industry, what was it, $75 billion, leading to an even worse business climate in New York. We talked a lot about that. But on the bureaucracy, this viewer says, MAGA and America First must address the administrative law issue. The bureaucracy has been crushing American freedoms with a stroke of their pen. Along with reducing costs, President Trump and DOJ must return our inalienable rights that have been eroded over the past few decades with the overbearing policies of these unelected agencies. Yes, the nameless, faceless bureaucrats who, as Politico was encouraging, we mentioned this a few weeks ago, an op-ed in Politico encouraging these nameless, faceless bureaucrats to gum up the works, if you will, to hinder the Trump presidency, proving, again, what Trump has been saying about the deep state or the swamp. So thank you to those comments. Let's get to what we know about the New Orleans terror suspect. Now, it is said there could be a connection between the New Orleans attack and the attack on Trump Towers in Las Vegas. Apparently, the two people involved worked at the same army base. But this is what we know about Shamsud Din Jabbar, who is the terror suspect in the New Orleans, what are they calling it? Vehicle ramming, I suppose. The suspect, who allegedly drove into a joyous crowd at a New Year celebration in New Orleans, killing at least 15 people and injuring dozens, has been identified as Shamsud Din Jabbar by the FBI. Now, he did die at the scene of the attack. He was a U.S.-born citizen who lived in Texas. Now, of course, by now you've heard that there was an Islamic flag being flown on the back of the truck. In 2012, Jabbar and Nakidra Charles Jabbar's marriage came to an end, is what the New York Times reported. That was his second marriage, or his second marriage also came to an end in 2022. The Times also reported that the pair shared 2 children together. This is what we know so far. The FBI also revealed that Jabbar was an Army veteran. Quote, "What I can tell you, the person was an Army veteran," Duncan said. "We believe he was honorable discharge, but we're working through this process to figure out all the information. He served in the Army as a human resource specialist and information technology specialist from March of 2007 until January of 2015. Following active duty, he served in the Army Reserves as an IT specialist from January of 2015 until July of 2020. During his tenure, he was deployed to Afghanistan from February of 2009 to January of 2010. He was also awarded a variety of distinguishment through the service, including Global War on Terrorism Service Medal. I'm not going to go through all of his service medals. Prior to his service in the Army, he attempted to join the Navy. He was discharged before he would serve in the Navy. Jabbar was charged with 2 minor crimes in 2002 and 2005. In 2002, a misdemeanor theft in Katy, Texas, and in 2005 with driving with an invalid license. He was an active voting, or he did have an active voting registration according to Fox News Digital, but Texas does not have partisan voting registration. He previously resided in North Carolina, where he was a registered Democrat. I don't believe that has anything specifically to do with the attack. It looks like a radicalization. he was deployed to Afghanistan. This is just some of the information that we know. The problem with a breaking story like this is it changes. We've already seen changes where first there was, three suspects that they thought were planning IEDs around New Orleans. The FBI has since ruled out the involvement of 3 men and 1 woman allegedly seen planting IEDs around New Orleans. They've ruled out that the ISIS flag-flying terrorist who killed at least 15 people and injured dozens of others had help from 4 people spotted on surveillance footage near the deadly attack. According to the New York Post, and specifically Joe Marino, video surveillance from the French Quarter seemingly showed 3 men and 1 woman planting explosives at multiple locations. Federal authorities have since ruled out their involvement in the tragic attack, but still suggested that the terrorist suspect was not, quote, solely responsible. And that seems to be a common refrain, that others were involved. He was not a lone wolf working alone. There are some videos of him. We're not going to go through all that, but at least 3 IEDs, which were pipe bombs wired to remote detonators, were found at or near the scene. Law enforcement sources said that authorities were investigating whether the attack had connection to any international terrorist group. Now, there was some confusion because initially the FBI, and this is one of the problems, they sow confusion, and I don't know if it's in the guise of being maybe politically correct, but they said that originally it was not a terrorist event. Now, you think someone flying an ISIS flag would probably raise at least a few questions about if there was terrorism involved. But the FBI is under fire after initially asserting that the truck ramming attack on Bourbon Street was, quote, not a terrorist event. However, the FBI is now getting pushback for initially stating the attack was not a terrorist event. A real head scratcher, particularly given the agency admitting that there were improvised explosive devices involved as well. Quote, this is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is there are improvised explosive devices that were found, and we are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street. This contradicts the official statement from the FBI, which has since stated that it is working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism. And Joe Biden specifically confirming that it was inspired, at least, by ISIS. In his speech, he mentioned this, and we're going to talk about what he had to say, but he specifically said it had been inspired by ISIS. During a speech from Camp David, Biden thanked the law enforcement officers and first responders, quote, who stopped the attacker in his tracks before he could kill or injure more people, and officials with the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for, quote, working nonstop to investigate the attack. Biden added that the FBI had reported to him that the suspect, who was previously identified, as we have mentioned all that, as an American citizen, quote, was inspired by ISIS. I know I can speak for all Americans when I say our hearts are with the people of New Orleans after a despicable attack occurred in early morning hours. To all the families of those that were killed, to all those that were injured, to all the people in New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you, and we are standing with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come. Here's what we know so far. Again, this is President Joe Biden. The FBI has reported to me that the killer was an American citizen born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct the attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby. Now, they did find bomb-making material in his New Orleans Airbnb. A small fire had broken out at the property in question around 5:30 a.m. on Mandeville Street. Sources said that they found bomb-making materials at the residence after extinguishing the blaze and deploying bomb-sniffing dogs. The 3-block area surrounding Mandeville Street has been closed off as authorities continue to collect evidence. It's unclear when the area will reopen. If you saw, there's a video circulating online of where he lived, not the Airbnb, but where he lived. Very squalor conditions. I guess he was in some serious financial trouble. But they are saying, and we're just having the breaking news of the New Orleans terrorist attack. If you're joining us, multiple people involved in the attack, they're saying. There are multiple people, excuse me. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrill, which we'll be talking about later, she's doing a great job suggesting, in a time when this is not perhaps popular, at least not with the current administration, suggesting the death penalty for anyone else involved in this terrorist attack. But she said she is certain there are, quote, multiple people involved in the terror attack. Speaking to NBC News, Ms. Muriel said police had searched an Airbnb, as I just mentioned. They had connection to manufacturing of IEDs tied to the attack. The FBI had previously said it does not believe Jabbar was solely responsible for the attack and asked the public for assistance. It is said in the investigation of Jabbar, quote, potential associates and affiliations with terrorist organizations. So that's a quick overview. We're going to talk more about, we're going to tie it in, or we're going to talk about, I shouldn't say tie it in, with the Trump Hotel Tesla. I shouldn't say Trump Towers, it's Trump Hotel Tesla Cybertruck explosion. Boy, if you've seen that video, it's disturbing, just like the videos that they have of the New Orleans attack. But some believe that there could be a connection there because both served at the same base while in the Army. We're going to talk about that when we come back. I see waves coming in. Thank you for joining us for the first edition of Frankly Speaking here in the year 2025. I do want to say we're not just going to focus on these attacks, but I think they are worth noting. We also have a couple international stories. Quickly, some New York State issues. Nothing on specifically on the climate change super fun. We're going to, after the kind of the fun of the holiday season wears off, we get back into the nitty gritty. We're going to have Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Him and I have been talking about this extensively, the climate change super fund bill that Governor Hochul signed into law. We've been having conversations about it. We're going to have him on the program and really do a deep dive into what this means for the business climate in New York. But that's coming up probably next week or the week after, at the beginning of next week, and we're going to tell you more about this. But Andy Petros is going to join us. He has a upcoming seminar for those interested in running for elected office. This is a very busy election year, folks, for local races. And so this forum, if you will, is called How to Run for Local Public Office. And what's nice about it is you don't have to go to a certain location and sit there for a long time. It's all over Zoom. And it'll be held on January 8th. So we're going to talk to him on Monday to get more information. That's Andy Petros, the former Chemung County legislator. Basically, this is going to do a deep dive into what you need to know to run. Well, also, to piggyback off of that, Steuben County, and I hope you'll mark your calendar for this, and I hope you'll give it some consideration now that the holiday season is essentially over. Give yourself a little time to think, maybe over this weekend, if you're interested in running for elected office. Well, Steuben County is going to host a petition training class for elected office and for candidates. It's coming up on February 1st at 9 a.m. at the Steuben County Annex, located at 20 East Morris Street in Bath. This is what the class is open. It's open to all individuals. Anybody considering a run for office, okay? These are some of the topics that they will cover. Political calendar, how to properly fill out a petition, who can sign and witness a petition, the number of signatures required, filing deadlines, prima facie review and petition challenges, who participates in the caucus and the caucus process, requesting voter lists, campaign filing requirements, a list of all, this is an important one, a list of all elected offices up for election this year, and then updates on the even year law. This session is the only petition training class to be held in Steuben County for 2025. Whether you're planning to run, they say, or you want to learn more about the process, this class will provide invaluable guidance for ensuring your petitions and campaign filings meet all the necessary legal requirements. So I'd highly recommend, if you're even on the fence, to really start giving this a thought. Maybe attending either that class in Steuben County that we have up on the screen, or when we talk to Andy Petros more about the Zoom meeting, one or the other, because it's a tricky process, but it's a very rewarding process, and I hope that you'll at least give some consideration. You know, we talk about changing politics to change our communities for the better. Well, this is one of the ways to do it, and I'll say one of the most rewarding ways to do it. Rewarding, even if you do all of it, and at the end of the day you're not successful, you can still hang your hat on it. You can still be proud of it. So I would highly recommend, if you're thinking this is a very, very heavy election year for local offices. We'll be talking with Joe Sempolinski about that in the near future. He is, if you're not aware, of course, former congressman, current assemblyman-elect. I'm not sure. I think, I want to say tomorrow is maybe his swearing in. So soon he'll be assemblyman, Joe Sempolinski, but he's also the chairman of the almost gave him a title boost, of the Steuben County Republican Committee. He'll tell us how to get involved, some of the things that you need to know, because he's a very valuable resource if you're thinking of running as Republican for office. We'll find out about some of the races that are up, a lot of local, town council, city council, things like that, a legislature. We've been talking about the Steuben County legislature so much. So if you are interested, those are a couple opportunities for you. Thought we'd kick off the program with that. I've been meaning to promote it because I want people to, maybe over this weekend, as we are in the new year, to at least give it a thought. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me and I can get you in touch with who you need to talk to if you are interested in running for elected office. When we come back, more on the New Orleans attack, the New Orleans terror attack. We're going to talk about the Trump hotel, Tesla explosion, all that and much more when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselsen's Hot Tub. Hesselsen's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselsen's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselsen's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselsen's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
I'm Mary Offord. I've lived here for 70 years, but I do fine right here in my house, and I want to be here as long as I can be. And I feel comfortable knowing that if something happened to me, someone would know because of the cameras that are installed in various spots in my home. That has been a wonderful gift to me to be able to have that security and that support from Full Circle America, and that's what it's all about.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselsen studio here on Market Street in Corning. Thank you for all the waves and all the comments coming in. Now, a former Biden hostage official was on MSNBC covering the New Orleans terror attack that occurred on Wednesday. Senior Vice President for Global Operations of the Soufan Group, Christopher O'Leary, who was the Director of Hostage Rescue and Recovery during the Biden administration and worked with counterterrorism positions across multiple administrations, stated that, quote, Al-Qaeda and ISIS are stronger now than they've ever been, and that the U.S. government, quote, has pivoted a lot of its attention and resources and authorities away from it. If we continue to try to just bury our heads in the sand and hope the boogeyman, or if you watch True Grit, the booger man, is going to go away, these are the things that will start happening again, which is very scary. I think it'll surprise most people to learn that Al-Qaeda and ISIS are stronger than they've ever been through their affiliates around the world. So to give people a reference point, Al-Qaeda was roughly less than 500 members before September 11th, mostly relegated to Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda and ISIS grew out of Al-Qaeda, and their affiliates are globally dispersed with over about 24 countries around the world and compose roughly, ready for this, 40,000 members. So 500 before September 11th, currently around 40,000 members. So to think that terrorism is behind us is really naive. And unfortunately, the U.S. government has pivoted a lot of its attention and resources and authorities away from it. If we continue to try to just bury our heads in the sand and hope the boogeyman is going to go away, these are the things that will start happening again. So we were told it was a generational fight. We have to commit ourselves to that, number one. And number two, there's a great Afghan saying that if you have the watches, we have the time. Well, people committed to this extremist ideology, they're not a flash in the pan. They're intending to come after us when we let our guard down. So they're tying it or attempting to tie it in, and they think there could be a connection between the New Orleans terror attack and the Trump Hotel Tesla Cybertruck explosion. If you haven't watched the surveillance video, it is shocking. Now, again, this is an important note that I think should be made. This was not the Tesla fires that we've heard about, the EV fires that we've heard about. This is not what it looks like. I mean, it is very dangerous when those do catch fire, those batteries. We've talked about that extensively on this program, but that's not what this was. There was a lot of explosives involved, the gas, etc. A plume of eerie smoke that engulfed the outside of the hotel while the Cybertruck was left as a fiery wreck. Officials said at least 7 bystanders suffered minor injuries in the explosion, and the driver who pulled the truck into the valet area of the hotel was killed. A 2024 Cybertruck pulled up into the front of the hotel, and in fact, I can tell you, it pulled right up to the glass entrance doors of the hotel. We saw the smoke start showing from the vehicle and when a large explosion from the truck, said Las Vegas Metropolitan Sheriff Kevin McHale. The body of the victim was so badly burnt that authorities were not able to determine their race or gender. The blast occurred just hours after a U.S. military vet flying an ISIS flag rammed a pickup truck into a crowd of revelers ringing in the new year on Bourbon Street. President Biden later revealed that law enforcement is looking into if there's any possible connections between the bloody rampage on Bourbon Street and the Cybertruck detonation, and that they stressed in the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police are not ruling anything out as of yet. I don't know, but I could tell you we're absolutely investigating any connectivity to what happened in New Orleans, as well as other attacks that have been occurring around the world. Now, officials have not yet confirmed the identity nor the gender of the driver because they do not have 100% certainty of who the individual is. You're starting to see people make the rounds with who they think the person is. Some news outlets. There's another coincidence that absolutely we have to continue to look into. Authorities also confirmed that the Cybertruck was filled with fireworks-style mortars and are trying to determine whether they were set off deliberately. Cybertruck is the worst possible choice for a car bomb, said Elon Musk, as its stainless steel armor will contain the blast better than any commercial vehicle. Now, McHale, again, the sheriff, saying it's a Tesla truck, and we know that Elon Musk is working with President-elect Trump, and it's a Trump tower. So there's obviously things to be concerned about here, and there's something that's something we continue to look at. So again, if you are just joining us, we're not just going to talk about these 2 terrorist attacks this morning. We're going to talk about the speaker's race a little bit later on. We're also going to be talking about Trump and Biden and some other issues as well. But just wanted to give you an update this morning. They're saying there is a possible connection between the Cybertruck blast and the Bourbon Street attacks. That's according to Biden. Authorities investigate the possible link. Now, according to the Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom, now I will say, in full disclosure, they play a little fast and loose sometimes. They have different rules in the United Kingdom than we do. But they had a picture of who they believe the attacker is with the Cybertruck. They're reporting it as Matthew Livelsberger, who worked or who was in the same. It was in the army, with the attacker on Bourbon Street. They are. The New York Post. So they did confirm it at 3:30 this morning that it was Matthew Livelsberger, who's 37, rented the electric pickup truck that went up in flames. He was also behind the wheel that was packed with the fireworks-style mortars, camping fuel, and canisters. That's coming from law enforcement. He has several addresses in Colorado Springs, at least one of which was sworn by the feds late Wednesday. The dramatic explosion outside the Vegas Trump Hotel is being investigated by the FBI as a possible terrorist attack. The driver of the Tesla was killed in the blast, and at least 7 bystanders suffered minor injuries. Now, they both rented, this is another, I don't think, coincidence, they both rented it using the same rental app called Turo. We're going to tell you what that is in just a little bit. But Livelsberger, like Jabbar, had served in the Army, according to Denver 7. The FBI is probing that possible connection. A man who identified himself as Livelsberger's father declined to comment when reached out by the New York Post. So, I'm running late. Let's take a short break. We're going to talk more about this, give you as much updates as we can, and then we are going to move on to the speaker's race. I'd love to hear from you. Keep those comments coming in. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Heather and I had an argument just like any other couple. I was lost and lonely. I had snapped. I had a gun and I was going to take my own life. Heather helped me realize that there was still life to live for the better of myself, my family. My weapon is now safely put away.
My son, Ricky, took his life by the use of a firearm. It broke me in ways that I never knew that I could be broken. And I contemplated suicide. Afterwards, we found out his girlfriend, she was pregnant. If that was my grandson, I was gonna have to be here for him. I still own my firearm. I keep it in a safe because I want to keep my grandson and myself safe.
A moment of crisis can happen to anyone.
Store your gun securely, locked, unloaded, and away from ammo.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, it's haunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
The Big Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I was fixing my levels there a little bit. So both of the terrorist attacks, they both used Turo, which is a rental app. Turo is a platform that allows users to rent vehicles from trusted hosts that are registered with the site. Users punch in their location and are presented with a variety of rentable cars in the area, from sports cars to minivans and everything in between. There are very limited requirements for renters to secure a car from Turo. Renters using Turo are not required to have a U.S. license and are not required to have personal insurance coverage to rent a car. Turo said in the statement that insurance is automatically provided on every trip with the company. Renters do not need a valid driver's license to be a Turo account holder and to be of age, which in the U.S. is 18 years old. In most cases, you'll get approved immediately, Turo boasts on the website. Elon Musk responded to the Tesla Cybertruck explosion, saying he's never seen anything like this. The whole Tesla senior team is investigating this matter right now. We'll post more information as soon as we learn anything. We've never seen anything like this. Now, of course, it is not a typical... It's not a concern for those of you that have a cyber vehicle. That was not what you would call a typical fire that we've seen in some electric vehicles. Las Vegas police credited Elon Musk with helping to investigate the explosion. Matt Hill, who is the sheriff, the Metropolitan Police Department sheriff, said, "I have to thank Elon Musk specifically. He gave us quite a bit of additional information in regards to how the vehicle was locked after it exploded due to the nature of the force from the explosion. They were able to capture all the video from Tesla's charging station across the country. Musk sent that truck directly to us, so I appreciate his help on that." Around 8:40 a.m. local time. Well, we know all about the blast itself. The brother of the New Orleans terrorist, he says that his brother had been radicalized, and that radicalization is to blame for his kin's rampage. Abdul Jabbar, 24, of Beaumont, Texas, told the New York Times that his brother, Shashmud Din Jabbar, who killed at least 15 people in that New Year's Day attack, converted to Islam at an early age. The younger Jabbar told the newspaper that was his brother did not represent, or he does not represent, Islam. This is more some type of radicalization, not religion. He described his brother, who was killed by police after mowing down innocent people celebrating on New Year's Eve, a sweetheart, really a nice guy, a friend, really smart and caring. I always found that weird when the media go to those type of interviews. You know, they'll interview his mechanic and say, nicest guy you ever met. It's very odd. Now, in a video prior to the attack on Facebook, he pledged allegiance to ISIS. We know there was the ISIS flag on the back of his truck. Louisiana's Attorney General Liz Muriel touted the state's death penalty policy, hitting that her office will pursue it if any other suspects are identified in that attack. Quote, in Louisiana, we have the death penalty, and we will carry it out, she tweeted. She also wants the Sugar Bowl. If you're not familiar, the Sugar Bowl was delayed a day. She wants it delayed an extra day after the attack. The college football playoff game between Georgia and Notre Dame was originally scheduled for Wednesday, but was pushed back one day after at least 15 people were killed. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Muriel told NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt on Friday that she would have preferred the football game be delayed until at least Friday. Quote, not my decision, but I would like to see it delayed at least another day. If they ask my opinion, I would tell them that. Organizers of the Sugar Bowl, being held at the Caesar Superdome, which is about 1 mile away from the attack, decided to move the game to Thursday, today at 4 p.m. The winner of the game will play Penn State 1 week later in the Orange Bowl. We have been in consultation with ESPN in the college football playoff, with the Southeastern Conference, with the University of Georgia, with Notre Dame. All parties and all agree that it's the best interest in everybody and public safety that we postpone the game for 24 hours, Sugar Bowl CEO Jeff Hudley said during a press conference on Wednesday afternoon. Now, here in New York State, Governor Hochul weighed in on this with Mayor Adams, saying, this is Governor Hochul, who we talked so extensively about the other day. The terrorist attack that occurred in New Orleans this morning is a horrible reminder of the threat terrorism of all stripes poses to our country, our freedom, and our way of life. We fully condemn the cowardly act of evil against innocent New Year's revelers. Additional information is continuing to come to light, but public reporting suggests this attacker may not have acted alone. Although there is no known connection to New York State, I have nonetheless directed the New York State Police to be on high alert as details about the attack continue to unfold. The New York State Police and Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services remain in constant contact with the FBI and other federal partners, as well as the New York Police Department and state fusion centers throughout the country to ensure we collect, share, and analyze information about threats as quickly as possible. Again, if you're just joining us, this is Governor Hochul with a statement with Mayor Adams. New York State has a long history of investing in law enforcement and Homeland Security counterterrorism tools and operations. Under my administration, we have added an additional $10 million in annual counterterrorism funding to support local government efforts to intervene in and disrupt the radicalization process, and have increased the number of state police members assigned to the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. In addition, we have added a new staffing, intelligence tools, and other resources to the New York State Police Office of Counterterrorism and DHSES, because I believe our law enforcement and Homeland Security professionals deserve the finest tools and the best training available. New Yorkers have confronted the horror of terrorism, and we've always come out stronger for it. We stand ready to help our countrymen in New Orleans in any way we can. But I want to stress that New Yorkers should rest assured their government and I personally take this threat seriously. We'll continue doing everything we can to keep New York safe. Now, Mayor Adams saying New York is always an active target. We deployed police personnel to the right locations. Now, we had mentioned, again, I'm not going to spend the whole show on this. We do have to take another short break. Just a couple other quick things on it, and then we are going to move along a little bit to what some people had to say. Then we have a lot here to focus on when it comes to the political scene, specifically the speaker's race, which is tomorrow. Your thoughts on whether Speaker Johnson will be voted in as Speaker. Yesterday, there seemed to be some talks. It looks as if he may just get it. I know he met with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, kind of hunkered down and studied what they needed to do, because it's obviously something that needs to be done quickly, because the certification of the election is on the 6th, and they don't want any delay on that. So we'll be talking about that coming up, as well as a few things here about Biden, a little bit about New Year's Eve, all that and much more. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
When you think boots, think Hess Hesselsen's. Hesselsen's has the largest selection of work boots in the area. Composite and steel toe boots, Met Guard boots, soft toe boots, and hikers, duty and western boots all in one location. Hesselsen's at Meyer Heights. Hesselsen's has men's and ladies boots in all sizes and widths. Choose from the largest names in the industry. Danner, Carolina, Timberland Pro, Keen Utility, Thorogood, Area, and Georgia, to name just a few. Hesselsen's has been locally owned and operated since 1955, so when you think local service and great selection, think Hesselsen's. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history making. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Visit Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. We are back with Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for all the waves coming in. Comment from a viewer. Yeah, Hochul, nice double talk. You let illegal immigrants run rampant in New York State, let criminals go unpunished, and so on. Nice job. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Yes, that is a good point. As she tries to highlight her support for police. She's done this in the past, but yet you see the bail reform. Did you see that the guy who pushed someone onto the train tracks, or subway tracks, I should say, almost killing them? He was out as he was doing that because of bail reform, out because of the no bail law. Yeah, so it's a little bit of double talk. I would agree with that statement from the viewer. Thank you very much. Now, Trump did weigh in on the Bourbon Street terror attack in a fiery post on Truth Social. He called the United States a disaster and laughingstock all over the world. This is what happens when you have open borders with weak, ineffective, and virtually non-existent leadership. He went on to blast the Justice Department, the FBI, and Democrat state and local prosecutors. They are incompetent and corrupt, having spent all their waking hours unlawfully attacking their political opponents, me, rather than focusing on protecting Americans from the outside and inside violent scum that has infiltrated all aspects of our government and our nation itself. Democrats should be ashamed of themselves for allowing this to happen to our country. He called on the CIA to get involved before it's too late. The U.S. is breaking down. A violent erosion of safety, national security, and democracy is taking place all across the nation. Only strength and powerful leadership will stop it. See you on January 20th. Make America great again. So that is President-elect Donald Trump. According to Senator-elect Bernie Moreno from Ohio, he says the Senate must confirm Donald Trump's nominees quickly after likely terrorist attack on Bourbon Street and what happened in Vegas at the Trump Hotel. Quote, after what appears to potentially be an ISIS-inspired terrorist attack last night in New Orleans, it's even more vital that we quickly confirm all of President Trump's nominees. He stressed that every single national security nominee should be confirmed and ready to protect America by January 20th, the day Trump is sworn in for his second term. So there's a clear mandate, Moreno said. And unlike 2016, people understand exactly what President Trump's agenda is, and they're not confused or unclear about what President Trump will do when in office. There's never been a more crystal clear, quote, this is what Trump's agenda is. It's black and white, laid out and clear as can be. There's never been a worse cabinet currently in American history than Joe Biden's cabinet. And yet not one Democrat senator said peep about what this person was qualified for or not. People like Buttigieg, Jake Sullivan, Mayorkas, all just grossly unqualified people and terrible disasters. Then, most importantly, every single one of them voted for every single one of Biden's nominees. Okay. Melania Trump denounced the terrorist attack, saying the incident of violence that have impacted our communities are deeply concerning. The brutality must stop. This is Melania Trump. My heartfelt thoughts and prayers are with the families who are experiencing such profound grief and loss. Let us strive for a future where peace prevails. Earlier in the day, of course, Trump slammed the tragedy as an act of pure evil. I think former New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu had an important point on CNN, saying it's a day where our hearts are heavy, and of course everybody's thoughts and prayers go out to the incredible victims. Thanks to the law enforcement officers who ran to the fire and took the guy out, because it could have been exponentially worse. Thing is based on the information that we know, there's a lot of speculation, but we know that this was, in fact, an American citizen who we believe was from Texas and unbelievably had some kind of military record. And so it was evidently here for a couple of weeks. So not unlike the assassination attempt in New York sometime, evidently the guy had been here for a couple of weeks looking at how to get things done, and he was intent on killing a lot of people, which of course he succeeded in doing last night before the law enforcement officers, shot him. So everybody just needs to be vigilant. The Superdome is going to be safe tomorrow night. We do these things all the time. You understand now because all of our reporting that there was a nationwide threat. So this was a terrorist attack in an American city. But it wasn't just, and I think this is the important point that former New Orleans Mayor Mitch Landrieu makes, it wasn't just an attack on New Orleans. It was an attack on America herself. And all of us have to be in this fight to make sure that we don't bow down to terrorists. We don't let them stop us from enjoying ourselves. But we have to secure the city, and we have to continue to do this over long periods of time, because we've had these other major events coming, not at least of which is the Super Bowl, which we've handled many, many, many times. Yes, you can't let the terrorists win, of course, but I think that's also a very good point, that this is an attack on America herself, and we can't bow down to these terrorists. We talked about this not that long ago on this program, where there's so many people, especially since we've had the open borders. Now, I know that he was an American citizen, but I'm saying since we've had the open borders, where people are very concerned that we've got kind of a September 10th mindset, where, as we've heard earlier, that we're burying our heads in the sand about the threat of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Franklin Graham blamed this on the issue that this is an issue of the human heart. Media, law enforcement, and the mayor are suggesting that this horrific act of violence on Bourbon Street early this morning may be a case of terrorism. Whether it is terrorism or not, the issue is the human heart. This is a clear indication of the evil in the human heart and the evil that is around us in the world. After brutally running over dozens of people, the driver opened fire on the police and 2 officers were shot. We pray for those who have lost loved ones and the many injured. The tragic incident is a reminder of how important it is for each of us to be ready to stand before God. None of us know when we might be caught in a vortex of violence and evil, and our lives on this earth will come to an end. The only hope for all of us is that we repent our sin and put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ. That was Franklin Graham. Now, and this is going to make you so mad. We've talked so often, and this is the last little bit I want to talk about this, and then we're going to move on to some other issues of the day. But when we come back, I'm going to tell you how some responded in New York City to this attack. Now, I will hint that if you recall, on Veterans Day, there was groups that protested the veterans and actually had a martyrs awareness type protest. We've seen on the anniversary of October 7th, I think you know where this is going. On October 7th, there was protests in the street of New York City. Well, we're going to tell you what happened yesterday on the streets of New York City, but we have to take a short break, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
If you season of sherry,
Having a good time has always been my #1 goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox. Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Comment from a viewer. I like the present speaker, Mike Johnson. Yeah, he did kind of go with the Democrat Party on a few things, but I'm sure by now he knows better as Trump is going to take over. I would agree. And I don't think the people that are so frustrated with him working with the Democrats, I think, listen, both parties want 100% win, right? This speaks for Democrats, it speaks for Republicans. So understand this idea, well, why do we give Democrats this, or why do we give Democrats that? Well, at the end of the day, the Republicans had such a slim majority. And you have so much really infighting in the Republican Party with the, and the MAGA Republicans versus the moderate, wishy-washy kind of Mitt Romneys, if you will. So it was tough. It was a tough challenge. So yes, I think the one that hurt him the most was probably that continuing resolution, not realizing that Republicans are pretty much already believe that Trump is in office. I mean, Biden has kind of ceded that power to him. So he was thinking, well, as long as we get past January 20th and then we'll have the majority, then we'll get something really done. When Trump was saying, no, I won on November 5th, that's when MAGA starts taking effect. So he did make a little bit of a tactical mistake there, but I think he has since corrected that mistake. We're going to talk about this extensively because he met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago with kind of a strategy session. We'll talk about that and what to look forward to tomorrow. There'll be a lot of us glued to C-SPAN. Do you think, and I like your message, thank you, by the way, to that viewer, because I do think Speaker Johnson has not only done a very good job, an effective job as Speaker, but his support for Trump during the election was just fantastic. I mean, he was going on the Sunday shows that he didn't really need to go on, and eating a lot of grief, we'll say, from the hosts, but doing it as kind of a happy warrior, if you will, in support of Trump. So I do think he'll do a good job. As who was it who said it? Representative Mike Lawler, who many believe is going to run for governor of New York State. He was saying, maybe the more conservative faction wants somebody more conservative, but they're not going to get that person. They're not going to get to that 218 votes, where Mike Johnson can if, it's the idea, the Reagan idea. If you're 20% of the time we disagree, you're still 80% my friend, not 20% my enemy. And I don't even think Mike Johnson is that bad at 20%. So I would just say, sometimes it's frustrating seeing a little bit of a loss here or a loss there when you have the majority, but it was such a slim majority, and it ends up being, at the end of the day, very much the some Republicans who take a very strong stance, and I don't knock them. They're standing up for what they believe in, but in some instances, some is just for grandstanding, like we saw with Matt Gaetz and the McCarthy debacle. I do think there are some that do it for the right reasons. I think there are others, like in any business, are doing it for showboating. But one last thing, as I mentioned, hundreds of anti-Israel protesters gathered in Times Square on New Year's Day, waving Palestinian flags and calling for Intifada revolution. On the same day, a terrorist carried out a deadly attack in the French quarters of New Orleans. The protests, organized by the Palestinian Youth Movement, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and the People's Forum, was led in a chant of "There's only one solution: Intifada revolution." Well, that's a new one. "We're sending you back to Europe, you white blanks," one female demonstrator said. Go back to Europe, go back to Europe. 2024 was a year of struggle against the crime of Zionism, one speaker shouted through a megaphone. "We will be here every single year for generation after generation until total liberation and return," they said. End all U.S. aid to Israel and Zionism and no war on Iran was their message. The crowd also chanted, "We will honor all our martyrs," which is very troubling after that terrorist attack in New Orleans. All right. Unfortunately, it's not a surprise. I mean, you knew where I was going with that. As soon as I said what happened in New York City, I'm sure you were aware that, it's going to be an anti-Israel, anti-American, anti-police protest. And sure enough, it certainly was. We've seen these on college campuses for the last few years, this radicalization. Just something to mention. Hey, on the international front, before we get into a couple New York State issues and before we wrap up this hour, and then we're going to talk about the speaker's race as well in the next hour, this is interesting. Exiled Syrian tyrant Bashar al-Assad, it is being reported, has been poisoned in an assassination bid, which left him struggling to breathe. The news comes as rumors have circulated that Assad's wife, Asma, is seeking a divorce. Now, this is coming from the Sun out of the United Kingdom. Again, as I mentioned with the United Kingdom, sometimes a little fast and loose, but a poisoning attempt has been made on ousted dictator Bashar al-Assad is what is being reported. The toppled Syrian tyrant has been under Putin's protection in Moscow since December 8th. But online account, General SVR, supposedly run by a former top spy in Russia, claims he was taken ill on Sunday. It claims Assad asked for medical help, then almost immediately began to cough violently and choke. There's every reason to believe an assassination attempt was made. Assad was said to have been treated in his apartment and his condition supposedly stabilized on Monday. Tests were reported to show that he had poison in his system. No sources were cited, and there has been no confirmation from Russia. So it's a little bit of a spy case here. Last month, it was revealed that al-Assad's wife, Asma, had been effectively barred from returning to the UK, even though she was born in London. She will be able to return home as her passport will not be able to return home as her passport has expired. So apparently they are going to get a divorce. Anyway, that's just an international update. When we come back, a couple New York State issues, just one that I want to get your opinion on from the Albany Times Union. And then we're going to take a deep dive into some of the things going on in the Biden administration, looking ahead to the Trump administration, and as I mentioned, the speaker's race, which will take place tomorrow. Many of us will be glued to C-SPAN. Unfortunately, when I worked for Congress, I said I would never watch C-SPAN again. And then the McCarthy vote went down, and I watched it for too long, and now we'll have this. But anyway, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Today's top story, increasing fuel costs continue to drive up inflation, making it harder to afford everything from food to home heating.
Here at Hustlesons, we know the only way to beat inflation is to fight inflation. So we're fighting back with zero interest financing and big cash rebates. Get a 4-person hot tub for your family for as little as $100 per month and pay zero interest. Or save up to $3,000 on a fabulous salt system hot tub. And of course, you will always get Hustlesons' unbelievable service. Don't let inflation fears kill your dreams. Fight back with Hustlesons. Remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hustlesons.
And Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon. Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
Welcome to Frankly Speaking, talking to the people that affect your life, that affect all of our day-to-day lives. This is something you're not going to get anywhere else. We've got a lot to offer. There'll be a lot of news, local, regional, national, really the things that affect you. And I think you'll be glad that you tuned in. So think of it as radio on TV. Frankly Speaking, live, 2 hours long, starting at 6 a.m. on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is history. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, wrapping up hour number 2. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the waves. We are going to talk about the speaker's race. We're going to talk a lot about Biden here in a little bit, and Trump, et cetera, et cetera. But first, let's end the hour on this. Last show that we had in 2024, we talked a lot about the Climate Change Superfund. And Governor Hochul's support of that, which is now law, $75 billion coming from the fossil fuel industry, because she believes that's why climate change happened. Now the problem with that is that's telling businesses that, hey, you know how you followed all the rules by the DEC and you got all the proper permits and the proper applications and you were doing everything exactly as we wanted you to? Well, 10 years later, we don't like it and we're going to fine you. Imagine any business that all of a sudden becomes on the unpopular side of the kind of virtue signaling and what their fear could be about fining. Yes, you're good. As we heard from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano I keep saying last week, on Tuesday, yes, there will be lawsuits. That's crystal clear. But that's not what we're talking about this morning. We're talking about none other than former and disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo. Well, his counsel, Rita Glavin and Teresa Trachoma, wrote a letter to the editor in the Albany Times-Union saying, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, by the way, quote, the Times-Union editorial board gets it wrong in criticizing former Governor Andrew Cuomo for noticing a claim against Charlotte Bennett. Cuomo's words in 2021 reflected his willingness to believe that Bennett was simply mistaken. Wow, good for you, Cuomo. That's how you defend him. Reflected his willingness to believe she was mistaken. Boy, that's a real mark of an honorable person. His willingness, wow, the ego. While he also maintained he did not sexually harass anyone, he apologized if he unintentionally caused anyone to feel uncomfortable. That was not an admission of wrongdoing. It was a statement made in the face of the same sort of public pressure the Times-Union continues to apply. Me Too demands immediate apologies rather than due process. Cuomo did not initially sue Bennett, but after she sued him, he properly defended himself. By taxpayers' dollars, by the way, folks. That cost us, what was it, $28 million as New York taxpayers to defend him against this case with Bennett. They don't want you mentioning that, though. Remember, they tried to put a gag order on her lawyers, Bennett's lawyers, from even talking about it because we know he wants to run for mayor and then work his way for mayor, maybe even back to the governor's house. Now using Bennett's own communications, including thousands of texts and videos the Attorney General's investigators never obtained, we can prove that Cuomo's statements in 2021 about his interactions with Bennett were accurate and that her allegations were either flat-out lies or, at a minimum, serious distortions. After Bennett voluntarily dismissed her lawsuit on the eve of her long-scheduled deposition in the face of this damning evidence, she had the gall to repeat the falsehood that she had been sexually harassed. Unfortunately, because of Bennett's litigation gamesmanship and Attorney General Letitia James' continued refusal to release all the evidence from her since discredited investigation, the only way to prevent continued public deception may be through an affirmative case. It's reckless for the editorial board to judge until it's seen the evidence. The truth will come out, and Cuomo will be vindicated. That's how we end hour number one. According to Cuomo's lawyers, Cuomo will be vindicated. Next thing you know, mayor, and after that, at least the governor's mansion. When we come back, a few things here about Biden. We're going to talk about the race for speaker a little bit later on. What else do we have here? A couple of updates on some various issues. Get your opinion on a few things. I don't know if we'll have a chance to get to this, but the New York Post has a very interesting piece this morning, from stowaways to squirrel scandals. The weirdest and wackiest stories of 2024. We'll try to get to that a little bit later on. Also, they asked the question, and I think this is kind of interesting. It's the Wall Street Journal asking the question, what happens when a whole generation never grows up? As American 30-somethings increasingly bypass the traditional milestones of adulthood, economists are warning that what seemed like a lag may in fact be a permanent state of arrested development. Something to think about. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, hour number one in the books, hour number two in mere moments.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
something with a diamond in it?
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Comment from a viewer. I can't believe Cuomo is not in jail for putting COVID victims in nursing homes and killing the elderly. I'll never, ever vote for him for anything. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, when we talk about the scandals, the sexual harassment scandals, others, yes, if you look at what needs to be focused on, is the directive, and then Cuomo's covered up. I mean, even people on his own side, the Democrat Party, saying after that House hearing that it was malpractice. It may not be the exact word that they used, but that he knowingly hid the numbers, manipulated the numbers. He put COVID positive patients in with the most vulnerable people possible, the nursing home population. So I agree, and that's not something we can forget as we talk about Governor Cuomo. Hey, just as I guess you would call it an update, you know, we've talked a lot about the media and the media covering up. By the way, I don't want to get too much into this, but did you see, I'm not really familiar with her work as we talk about the media, but Whitney Cummings, she's a comedian. She was on CNN's New Year's Eve coverage. She was talking about her career. She says, I'm now playing, like 3,000 seat theaters, which is about the viewership of CNN these days. She's saying this live on the New Year's Eve celebration on CNN. She then went on to talk about the Democrats. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary this year. They were too busy holding up a body, meaning Biden. And that this was going to tie into the article I'm about to mention. Wow, the Democrats couldn't hold a primary this year. They were too busy holding up a body. Boy, Anderson Cooper did not look like he was enjoying these jokes, by the way. The pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to their candidate. The pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to their candidate. Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer or Moderna. Yeah, she got away with a lot. I mean, it was not all anti-Democrat, don't get me wrong. But, yeah, propping up that body. So that ties in. She had one other comment. I thought I had it here. Where was it? She also picked on Hunter Biden. She said the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader documentary shows the girls being treated horribly, underpaid, and crying. I thought I'd opened a video on Hunter Biden's laptop. She's saying that on CNN. But anyway. So journalists who joined gaslighting on Biden's decline should never live it down. This is coming from the New York Post editorial board, and kind of a topic that we've discussed quite frequently here on the program. President-elect Donald Trump is forcing the Democratic politicians who spent years lying about President Biden's senility to take their bitter medicine. But we're more concerned about the toady media who played along. And I don't know if you saw that super clip that Trump put out on Truth Social, which was not all the times, but many times when various Democrat politicians like Nancy Pelosi and others, Chuck Schumer, saying he's sharp as a tack, smartest he's ever been, smarter than, and it was really kind of weird, but Kareem Jean-Pierre saying something to the extent of, he's even smarter than me. Like, that's the highest bar ever set. Anyway, Trump on Monday posted a video showing clip after clip of cringeworthy Democrat leaders, from Representative Nancy Pelosi to Homeland Security Chief Mayorkas, denying again and again that Biden was mentally and physically deteriorating, claiming he was sharp, on his game, focused, and that his age is an asset. Every last one deserves scorn, but so do the journalists, who not only let these fantastical fibs go unchallenged, but even parroted the lies. Biden was showing no signs of mental decline, they insisted, and it was offensive, ignorant, and borderline bigoted to even suggest otherwise. Yes, that you were lying about it, that you, whatever you saw with your own eyes. Now, this is very interesting because you had that CBS reporter saying the same thing, that this was a story that should have been covered. But they knew they had to protect Biden until they no longer needed to protect him. The entire idea that Biden was anything but healthy was treated as right-wing tinfoil hat talking points. The public wasn't buying it. Back in February, 86% of Americans thought Biden was too old to serve a second term because they had watched his decline happen in real time. and over the course of several years. Yeah, and according to that Wall Street Journal report that we had mentioned a couple weeks ago, it was known in the White House from day one. So the people around him there, the Kamala Harrises, Dr. Jill Hunter, but also all the people around him, trust me, they've got a huge staff, but the media that are allowed in to ask him questions, the Nancy Pelosi's, Chuck Schumer's, his cabinet members that were having meetings with him. But continuing. Way back in 2022, some 75% of Democrat voters wanted someone other than Biden to run in 2024. But the Biden is fine charade continued even after special counsel Robert Hur said a jury would see Biden as an elderly man with a poor memory. And Biden himself began repeatedly calling world leaders by the names of their dead predecessors. Yeah, so we saw it with our own eyes, but they were telling us, no, everything is fine. And remember, when they start blaming him for not getting out early enough, they are the reason, the media and the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, are to blame why he ran. Because they were telling him he was fine, they were telling the world he was fine, and they put him up for re-election until that debate, which forced their hand. But it's more their fault than it is Biden's fault. If you're surrounded by yes people that tell you you're healthy, why wouldn't you run? The White House smeared all video proof of Biden's decline as cheap fakes, remember that? And edited transcripts to erase signs of his constant memory issues. And at every turn, spineless, in-the-tank journalists obediently did Team Biden's dirty work, right up until the debate, when Biden's senility became too unmistakable to continue to deny. Now they're acting bashful, but it's far too late to salvage their shredded credibility. Ex-MSNBC host Mehdi Hassan said he was embarrassingly wrong to say Republicans will regret helping spread the distorted image of Biden as a guy who was totally out of it leading up to the debate. And you're going to regret that. I don't think they did. Progressive journalist Matt Yglesias said he thought Joe was going to prove his doubters wrong. Is it better or worse if they actually believed it? Democrat-friendly journalists saw the same evidence as the rest of us that Biden was compromised. And instead of being skeptical, asking questions, and putting the White House's feet to the fire, doing their jobs, they joined the crusade to gaslight America. And you ask the question, the simple question, if this were Trump, if this were George W. Bush, if this were any Republican president, do you think they would have given him the pass, saying, no, everything's fine, we don't need to look into this, we don't need to ask the question? Incoming Trump press secretary Carolyn Leavitt says she intends to change up who gets preferred access to White House briefings, allowing non-traditional voices like podcasters. Since the legacy media completely and willfully failed to cover one of the biggest stories of this decade, that the President of the United States was unfit for office from day one and his entire staff was hiding it, that seems like a fair shake. No one who perpetrated, concealed, or ignored this grotesque scandal should ever live it down. That's from New York Post editorial board, echoing what I've been saying on this program for numerous times, that this is the biggest scandal perhaps in presidential history, and one where journalists should be held accountable, where certain Democrats should be held accountable. But also, as we talk about Biden, there's a lot of damage he's been doing on his way out the door. Now, the 6th is when the election will be certified, if everything goes well with the speaker's race tomorrow. And the 20th, of course, is Inauguration Day. So that's very important moments to put on your schedule. But look at the pardons and the commuting of sentences that he's been involved in. Now, and this is something we did not get a chance to mention earlier in the week, but we mention it now, where you have the 9/11 masterminds will now avoid the death penalty. You remember that weird plea deal that was taken? And then there was so much public outrage that they backtracked on it. Well, now they're saying they're not going to backtrack on it. It's very confusing, but it's one last forget about you, we'll put it that way, to America, according to the Post editorial board. But it should come as no surprise. Listen, there's 37 people that were taken off of death row by this commuting of sentence by the president, leaving only three people on death row. The Biden administration's toxic legacy continues to do grave harm to Americans and the national interest. The latest outrage is the renewed likelihood that the 9/11 masterminds will avoid the death penalty. Think about that as we see another ISIS-inspired attack on New Year's Eve. On Monday, an appeals court tossed Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's move to stop the plea deals offered to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and co-conspirator Walid bin Attash and Mustafa al-Hawasani. Those deals were signed in July by senior defense officials and retired Brigadier General Susan Escalier, an Austin appointee to the Office of Military Commissions. Escalier horrified Americans and the families of 9/11 victims when she okayed the monstrous agreement. Austin, after publicly, pathetically confessing to have been surprised by the move, tried to nix the move, prompting a legal tussle that at moments seemed to have been resolved not in favor of justice in America, but injustice and in favor of the enemies. The whole episode reeks of cowardice, toadyism to the left, and above all, incompetence at the highest level. The idea that Austin would even attempt to fob off a catastrophe like this with mumbling about his surprise amid ineffectual efforts to avert it's absurd. It is absurd. He's the Secretary of Defense, not VP of Sales at a mid-sized tractor manufacturing company, according to this is the New York Post. And yes, Chief Biden Flack, Karine Jean-Pierre, and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan have denied that the White House had any foreknowledge of the ugly deal. But at this point, how much is their word worth? And also, why is this a case that we actually accept that Austin, that Biden didn't know about these plea deals for the 9/11 mastermind, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed? Even if they're telling the truth, no one has any reason to believe them. Plus, given that KSM's continued presence at Gitmo was an obvious obstacle to Biden's hope of shutting the prison down, it's 100% feasible that Biden, whoever's been running the country, engineered this obscenity. After all, sacrificing everything for short-term political gain is the Biden administration's standard operating procedure. Look at the Afghanistan pullout, the border disaster, and, well, let's face it, everything else. Even without direct Oval Office involvement, this is still the administration's work, complete with its trademark incompetence. At best, this is Biden and company bungling literally the most important military prosecution in American history. Even on the way out, Joe can't help staining the office he served in and hurting the country he pretends to love. I thought there was a powerful message from the New York Post and a story that we did not get an opportunity to speak on earlier when it was announced that it looks like that going against the plea deal is not going to happen. It looks like there will be a plea deal, but it should come as no surprise as we saw what happened with the commuting of the sentence by President Biden on his way out the door. We've got a couple other things about Biden. When we come back, we also, we do have to talk about the speaker's race. Arguably the biggest, it's not the biggest topic, but something politically speaking is something that we have to dive into. We were talking about in the first hour, of course, that terrorist attack, which is the biggest story in New Orleans, and the Tesla Cybertruck. It looks like a terrorist attack as well, but an explosion, a purposeful explosion, that someone did this, masterminded this, to explode in the way that it did in front of Trump's hotel in Las Vegas. We talked about that extensively in the first hour, but I'd love to hear from you on all the issues of the day and what are your thoughts about Cuomo and his lawyer, his counsel saying that he's going to be completely vindicated. But let's take a short break. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
At John G. Ullman & Associates, our clients come first. As a fiduciary, we build personalized plans rooted in our shared ethics and values.
And you've been doing this for 45 years?
Yes, our in-house team creates custom plans built for you and your family.
We like the idea of a relationship that lasts.
That's what we're all about, helping you and your family build and protect wealth for generations. John G. Ullman & Associates, here for everything your money touches.
Hi, I'm Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
Football's newest show breaks down all things NFL. GMFB Overtime.
Check out top highlights, player interviews, special guests, and everything in between. 5 days a week.
GMFB Overtime. It's football for everyone.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. A comment from a viewer. I think Biden was being used as a puppet by Obama and others who wanted to run their own agenda and could, by proxy, have all the power of the presidency. In other words, they lied about Biden's mental health so they could continue to run the country behind the scenes. Thank you to the viewer who sent that in. That's why many people have said after the election that this was the end of the Obama era. Not just in the way he campaigned and kind of the style and all that, but also just the end of those policies, the failed policies. Trump signaled that people were done with the Obama policy. So I think you raise a good point. Now, Biden, listen to this. This has got to be one last dig at Trump. Now, we recall early in the week or late last week with the holidays, they all started blending together. But we had, for some reason, Joe Biden using, for lack of a better word, the opportunity of the passing of Jimmy Carter to take a dig at Trump. So there's still this pettiness on the way out the door. Well, Biden is going to give the leaders of the January 6th congressional panel, Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, the United States' second highest civilian medal. Now, we had heard that he might even pre-pardon them because they thought that Trump would go after Liz Cheney and others. Joe Biden is bestowing the second highest civilian medal on Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson. Boy, it really does pay to go against a Republican, especially like Liz Cheney. If you are a Republican, going against the Republican presidential candidate or the president, former president, boy, it really does pay. Biden will award the Presidential Citizens Medal to 20 people in a ceremony on Thursday, so today, at the White House, including Americans who fought for marriage equality, a pioneer in treating wounded soldiers, and two of the president's longtime friends, former Senators Ted Kaufman and Chris Dodd of Connecticut. Quote, President Biden believes these Americans are bonded by their common decency and commitment to serving others. The country is better off because of their dedication and sacrifice. Biden last year honored people who were involved in defending the Capitol from the rioters or who helped safeguard the will of the American voter during the 2020 presidential election when Trump tried and failed to overturn the results. Cheney, who was a Republican representative from Wyoming, and Thompson, a Mississippi Democrat, led the House committee that probed the insurrection. Cheney later said she would vote for Democrat Vice Presidential Kamala Harris in the 2004 race. We know that she was campaigning. Cheney, and a lot of people thought that was a very misguided step by Harris during her campaign, had Liz Cheney campaigning with her, which did nothing to get her Republican votes and really hurt her in some Democrat circles, from Democrats who said, wait, weren't we supposed to hate the Cheneys? We've been told that they're most evil for decades now, and now you're kind of coddling up to them. Cheney later, continuing, Biden has been considered whether to offer preemptive pardons to Cheney and other Trump targets, which is, listen, they can't find a Trump enemies list, so they have to do something to keep pushing this narrative, so they have a Biden preemptive pardon list, okay? Anyway, I'm not going to go through what she has said in the past. We know what she has said in the past about Trump. But again, if you're just joining us, Biden is giving the leaders of the January 6th congressional panel, Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, the United States' second highest civilian medal, the Presidential Citizens Medal. All right, so what are your thoughts about the speaker's race? Now, the speaker's race will take place tomorrow. Doesn't necessarily mean that it will finish tomorrow. This is a vote for who will lead the chamber for the next 2 years under the incoming Republican administration. I'm going to tell you, too, that they've changed some procedures. We know that they made a deal originally, and this is what happened with the McCarthy debacle. To get the support for McCarthy, they made a deal to make it very, very easy to oust a speaker. That is changing. With the new rules, we're going to tell you about that it will be more difficult to oust a speaker. Johnson is running to retain his position in the next Congress, but has not yet received support from all his Republican colleagues. The 2025 vote carries particularly intense pressure, as the House must agree on and elect a speaker in order to certify President-elect Donald Trump's election victory just days later. Now, the House is scheduled to vote on Friday, tomorrow, at noon, as dictated by the Constitution. So tomorrow at noon, I'm sure it'll be breaking news throughout the land. A speaker must be elected before the 119th Congress can be sworn in. Now, if you recall, this happened before. I remember watching it very clearly on C-SPAN with McCarthy back 2 years ago with the C-SPAN coverage, nonstop, 24/7, just the infighting, and I don't recall how long it took before there was the vote for McCarthy. Now, Republicans have the majority in the House for the 119th Congress, so they are in charge of choosing a speaker. Mike Johnson is running again as head of the chamber. At this point, no other candidate has thrown their hat into the ring, but in past years, alternatives have been floated during the day of the vote. Republicans currently hold a slim 4-seat majority in the chamber, with 219 seats compared to the Democrats' 215. The GOP majority is to dwindle even further when 2 of Trump's cabinet picks, Mike Walz and Elise Stefanik, assume their roles pending state confirmation, which is expected to take place several weeks after the speaker vote. So they will get to vote in on this. Given the number of seats held by the GOP, a Republican candidate would need 218 votes if all 434 members vote. Now, there is problems if there is infighting. We talked about this on the program a few days ago, that if there is infighting, there is a scenario, and no one hopes this happens, there's a scenario where Hakeem Jeffries could become speaker if enough, I don't know, like Rhino, maybe moderate type Republicans decide that they've had enough of this, that they just want to go home or whatever the case may be, and they throw their support, because the Democrats still get the vote. They just always vote for, for instance, Hakeem Jeffries is probably who they'll go for. And they do that every time. That's just the nature of it. So if you get a few defectors, it could lead to him actually getting it. Now, which Republicans have not committed to supporting Mike Johnson? We know Representative Thomas Massey recently told reporters he wouldn't vote for Johnson for Speaker. This seems like a little bit showboating. What is your thoughts on Thomas Massey? It's just like with Matt Gaetz the last go-around. There's some people that just want to act as if they're the power brokers, if they're the kingmakers. Thomas Massey, do you believe he's doing it for the best interest of the country, the best interest of, I guess we would say just the country? I have my doubts. Now, another GOP member suggested that he had not committed to voting for Johnson. Right now, I think that Mike has done an admirable job under tough conditions, but I'm going to keep my options open. I want to have a conversation with Mike, said Representative Scott Perry from Pennsylvania. Now, Hakeem Jeffries recently said Democrats won't bail Johnson out if he does not receive enough GOP votes. Now, Johnson introduced a government funding bill in early December, but the first proposal failed because before it even reached the House floor, after opposition from Republican lawmakers and from Musk and Ramaswamy. We know all about that. Many people believe that could change the whole trajectory of this, that if it does, it could end up costing him the speakers. That's why I don't understand why anybody would want to be speaker. Think of how good he was in his support of Trump, what an effective job he has done as speaker. And because of one, which you could maybe even call a misstep, they do not want to vote him back in. I mean, who would want the job? Now, the vote for Speaker will take place on Friday, just 3 days before Congress is scheduled to certify the results of the Electoral College for Trump. The House cannot proceed with any official business, such as counting the presidential election votes for Trump, until a Speaker is elected and the next Congress is sworn in. In January 2023, it took House Republicans 4 days, I couldn't remember, 4 days and 15 ballots to elect a Speaker. Trump announced he would back Johnson for the position, a pivotal endorsement that could help determine the Louisiana Republicans' chances come Friday's vote. Quote, the American people need immediately relief from all the destructive policies of the last administration. Speaker Mike Johnson is good, hardworking, religious man. He will do the right thing, and he will continue to win. Mike has my complete and total endorsement, MAGA, Trump wrote at the time. So that's kind of an overview of what we'll be looking at tomorrow. We'll tell you more about Mike Johnson. Do you think he will get it? Do you think it'll be one vote? How many will it break that 4-day bar set back in 2023? I'd love to hear your takes. And if you don't like Mike Johnson, feel free to weigh in on that as well. But we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Yo, camping buddy. Okay, you guys ready?
Dude, I thought you were driving.
I thought you were driving.
Oh, I never said I was driving.
I definitely can't drive.
Okay.
If you're high, just don't drive. It's illegal everywhere. If you feel different, you drive different.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, taunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
The Fox website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hasselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Comment from a viewer: sounds to me like the Democrats don't want Johnson to be the speaker. Therefore, we need him to continue as speaker. Yes, of course I know. He's a Republican. Speaker is a very powerful position. So no, they don't want him there. But if they don't vote for him, and listen, he's worked in the past with Hakeem Jeffries. They've had a kind of a they've been able to work with each other, whatever you think of that. I'm not saying that as a negative at all. So I think it's been a good thing. And Hakeem, the reason they pointed that out is because Hakeem Jeffrey and the Democrats have helped bail him out in certain instances where you had kind of the hardliners that were never going to vote for anything that Johnson puts forward for some reason. It's very odd to me. But that's why he had to signal that he's not going to, the Democrats aren't going to bail him out, because in the past that has been the case. So that's where that comes from. Now, Mike Johnson did huddle with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Johnson told News Radio 710 in Shreveport, I'm going to be with him, meaning Trump, at Mar-a-Lago on New Year's Day. We're going to map out some strategy, meaning for the speaker's race. Now we know that Trump has endorsed him in the past. The announcement had initially been scheduled to take place at the president-elect's Palm Beach, Florida resort on January 1st, with Trump wanting to, quote, take photos and do a big endorsement. Quote, I called him yesterday and said, Mr. President, let's go ahead and do that, the House Speaker added with a chuckle, so he did. Trump jumped the gun on the endorsement as several House Republicans expressed reservations about Johnson being reelected as Speaker. Quote, I remain undecided, as do a number of my colleagues, because we saw so many of the failures last year that we are concerned about what that might limit or inhibit our ability to advance the president's agenda, said Chip Roy. And I find that interesting, though. You're saying it might not help with the president's agenda, but the president is endorsing Speaker Johnson. Right now, I don't believe he has the votes on Friday, said Chip Roy. Representative Victoria Spartz, demanded that Johnson commit to significant spending audits and cuts if he wanted her vote, adding that the House GOP should engage competent, unbiased, non-swamp professionals to start tackling the ballooning national debt. Again, an honorable issue to take up, but is this the right avenue, I suppose? Thomas Massie has declined to back Johnson no matter what. I mean, that to me is just showboating and grandstanding and wanting to be kingmaker, in my opinion. Asked Tuesday night about the holdouts, Trump told reporters, quote, I think they'll support Speaker Johnson. He's the one that can win right now. People like him. Almost everybody likes him. And that was really the point that was made when he first got the Speaker, because he came out of really nowhere. I mean, I don't mean that disrespectfully. It just wasn't a name that we thought was going to be ever mentioned as Speaker. And it was basically the reason he got in is because people liked him and there wasn't enough people that quote unquote hated him, like you saw with the other people's names being thrown around at the time. So it was a really unique and interesting position. I just don't understand Thomas Massie. He's not going to back Johnson no matter what. But back to what Trump said, others are very good too, but they have 30 or 40 people that don't like them. So that's pretty tough, meaning other potential candidates. He promised he would call GOP lawmakers to whip up support for Johnson if it's necessary. On Monday, Trump gave Johnson his complete and total endorsement, as I had mentioned. House Republicans will start off with 219 members on Friday, meaning Johnson can only afford to lose one vote to hit the needed 218 threshold. It sounds like Massey's going to be that vote no matter what. Unless some lawmakers decide to vote present, and that changes the mathematics on all of it. Roy floated Representative Byron Donalds, and his name was thrown around last time as well. I like Byron Donalds. I don't think this is the time for him to make this move. And Jim Jordan as potential alternative speakers, but neither was able to win enough votes in past speakership ballots to clinch the gavel. Disgruntled House GOPers are still reeling from the passage of a government spending bill on December 20th that went through multiple drafts due to Trump's demand that include a suspension of the nation's debt ceiling. And that, of course, did not pan out. So this is what this all boils down to with Speaker Johnson and why there was such a fight. Because at one point it looked as if there was going to be no issue because of his support for Trump and the like. But then he decided to put forth that continuing resolution that was not popular because he was of the mindset that we get this done. It's kind of a very Washington mindset. Get this done now, and then when we have the majority in the House and the Senate, and the White House, of course, will take it from there. Then we'll really deal with it and really take a close look at it. Well, the damage was already done because to Trump and to Trump supporters and people like Elon Musk, Trump doesn't start on January 20th, as I keep saying. He starts, in their mind, on November 5th, the day he won the election. So it has been it could be costly mistake for Speaker Johnson, thinking that things were going to be done the way they're always done in Washington. But I think one mistake does not disqualify someone. I think if you look at the campaigning that he did for Trump, the support, the success he has had. Now, Johnson succeeded Kevin McCarthy, who was deposed in October 23 by every Democrat and 8 Republicans in a mutiny led by Matt Gaetz. Through several rounds of voting, Jordan, Tom Emmer, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, and others were put forward as successors only to lose by higher margins than the number that defeated McCarthy. Johnson was elected unanimously after roughly 3 weeks of the House Republican infighting. Quote, "We need a speaker right now who's not only a proven fighter, which I am, and a trusted lifelong conservative, which I am, but somebody who can work with every single member of this very diverse House GOP because we've got to get Trump's priorities over the line," Johnson said. "There's no other alternative for Speaker of the House, guys. That's not another name circulated. There's no other candidate proposed because everyone knows I'm the only one who can get the votes." It is going to be interesting to watch. There'll probably be some protest votes, so it may not go with the first vote. I would like to see a unanimous kind of signal where everyone votes for him, just to show a signal to the Democrats, because it's still a slim majority in the House that we are going to be unified behind the Trump agenda. I think that would be much more. The pro on that would definitely outweigh the con of his one mistake with the continuing resolution. But as I had mentioned, the House Rules package released yesterday raises the threshold for removing the Speaker of the House, as some conservatives consider a move to oust Speaker Mike Johnson. We're going to talk about that when we come back. I don't want to run too late. We'll tell you about the House Rules package, but they're changing it because really Republicans made kind of a tactical error, making it too easy to dispose or to oust your speaker, and that's why there was such a debacle and such a mess surrounding McCarthy. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
How many times have you tried to clean a stubborn mess but end up with no success? What you need is the all-new waterproof Ruby Horsepower, the new cordless and rechargeable power scrubber that cleans faster and easier, guaranteed. Watch, baked on oven grease is no match. It easily blasts away dirt and grime in no time. The power comes from our rotating brushes spinning at 350 RPM. The incredible torque fights calcium, soap, mildew, mold, and more. Forget harsh chemicals. With just plain water, Horsepower can clean bathroom tiles and tubs back to their original shine and luster. It's a game changer in the kitchen, where it busts through caked-on crud. Take it outside and tackle tough tasks with ease. How strong is Horsepower? We took this distressed 100-year-old antique and restored it to like new with Horsepower. Amazing! Get your Ruby horsepower scrubber today with bonus scouring sponge for just $39.99. Save on buying batteries. It's powered with the latest rechargeable technology. But wait, you'll also get this stainless steel brush to make range hoods and gas stoves look brand new again. Yours free. And we're not done. You'll get this Smart Flex cone brush that fits perfectly into corners, tiny crevices on toilets and tiles, or hard to reach shower door rails. Yours free. And to top it off, we'll include this microfiber cloth to clean delicate surfaces and polish cars sparkling clean. It's also free. Great news! Horsepower is now in stock and ready to ship, but due to high demand, there is a strict limit of 2 per order. Order now.
Call 1-800-980-4241. That's 1-800-980-4241, or visit horsepowerscrubber.com. So call 1-800-980-4241 now.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. So as I mentioned, the House Rules package, which was released yesterday, raises the threshold for removing the Speaker of the House. Some have argued that they made it a little too easy, that it would just take one person to really start to be the fly in the ointment, if you will. The House Rules package raises the threshold to introduce the motion to vacate a parliamentary procedure to remove the Speaker of the House. The new threshold requires that a member of the majority party, in this case Republicans, and 8 additional members of that same party sign in onto the motion to vacate to remove the Speaker. So that's really not too high of a bar when you think about it. So one person and 8 additional members. One person to sign onto it and getting 8 additional members, so 9 people total. This is a drastic change to insulate Johnson from being potentially ousted. The prior rule required only one House lawmaker to introduce the motion to vacate. While some Republicans have considered supporting a potential move to oust Johnson, Trump endorsed Johnson, as I mentioned, on December 30th. Trump reportedly fumed when Johnson failed to raise the debt ceiling as part of the recent government spending deal. Even though the president-elect endorsed Johnson, some conservatives are convinced that Johnson may not have the votes to become Speaker, as I mentioned, because you have Thomas Massie, Chip Roy, and others. The House Rules change enraged those on the other side of the aisle. Representative Jim McGovern, the ranking member of the House Rules Committee, scolded Republicans for not only allowing members of the majority party to offer motions to vacate. Their proposed changes would, for the first time in American history, shield the Speaker from accountability to the entire chamber. The American people did not vote for whatever the heck this is. And you better believe the Democrats will not let Republicans turn the House of Representatives into a rubber stamp for their extremist policy, says Jim McGovern, Democrat from Maryland. The House will convene on Friday, where it will first move to elect a Speaker, swear in its members, and vote on that rules package. So my question to you is, do you believe he will be voted? You don't even have to say first time, just in general. On Friday, that begins at noon. We'll be watching it closely. We'll see. It only takes one vote for it to start all over again. But I don't see anybody other than Johnson that has the 218. So let's say someone like Thomas Massie, who's being a real hardliner on this. And I think a little bit of that showboating and grandstanding and not thinking about what kind of detrimental effect this could have, not just on the country, but on Trump's agenda. But anyway, he knows better. And let's face it, there's kind of a history of that within the Republican Party, where there's someone that always knows better than everybody else. It's always the smartest person in the room. I think that's a little bit of what you're seeing here. So who would a Mr. Massie want if it's not him? Because if it's Jim Jordan or Byron Donalds, both good guys, they don't have it. They don't have the 218 votes. Johnson is as close as you're going to get. So do we get to a part where some of the more moderate Republicans finally say after vote, fine, I'm just going to go and vote for Hakeem Jeffries. It only takes a few. And then Hakeem Jeffries, a Democrat, would be the Speaker of the House in an election that saw a landslide victory for Republicans. So only Republicans could even have that be a question at this point, that could actually be a potential outcome in this vote. Also, you have the time frame, the timeline that you want someone decided by January 6th, because that is the day that Donald Trump, the election of Donald J. Trump, will be certified, and hopefully, if there is a speaker. But again, only Republicans would have a scenario where people actually consider the fact that the one possibility of an outcome would be that Democrats have the Speaker of the House. Now, this is an update from a story I brought to you on Monday, maybe Tuesday. The Department of Justice Inspector General released a report that revealed that the 3 employees had leaked information to the media. Remember that? We didn't have information at the time who this was. This was right before Election Day, and who it was supposed to hurt, who it was supposed to help. It was just that, someone had released this information to the media. We didn't know a lot of information about it. We now know it was an attempt to damage the electoral prospect of Donald Trump. So this is exactly speaking to the idea of kind of the deep state or the swamp that Trump talks about so often, these nameless, faceless bureaucrats who can try to do damage to Trump's agenda, or in this case, to the election. Should come as no surprise, because very often when they do that, they get in no kind of trouble, and probably instances where they get pats on the back. The Department of Justice Office of the Inspector General initiated an investigation after receiving allegations that actions by a litigant division were politically motivated and violated DOJ policies regarding disclosing information about ongoing matters. The list goes on and on. It's unclear what investigation was leaked and what the leaks were. The New York Post points to a letter by Senator Chuck Grassley that in turn refers to an article in the Washington Post in August that alleged that Trump was investigated for supposedly receiving $10 million from the Egyptian president during the 2016 race. So anyway, it should be no surprise, but that is an update that we had for you, that yes, indeed, it was to hurt or be detrimental to Donald Trump. Here we go. This is a comment from a viewer. Let the United States people vote for the speaker, not the elected officials. It would be more fair. Well, maybe. It could get interesting. Hey, here's a Happy New Year's. Well, Happy New Year's to you, too. Thank you for all the comments. Ken saying, Frank, I like the idea of Liz Cheney getting a medal, but it should come from the 47th president. Trump should hold a White House ceremony to celebrate the person that achieved the position of being most disliked Republican in the party's history. The Undistinguished Medal of the Rhino. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, think about that. So disliked by her own party, but also doing major damage to Kamala Harris. From Democrat voters. So not just her own party, Ken, to your point, but also the Democrats who said, wait a minute, we were told for decades we were supposed to hate the Cheneys and that they were evil. And now Harris is going around the country and talking about her endorsement, that Cheney endorsed her. It was a very weird scenario. Okay. How am I doing on time? I'm doing good. Where do we want to go from here? As an update here, and I don't want to get too much in depth because I don't have all the information, but they're saying that the Washington Post is saying that years of inaction on crisis as the Secret Service set stage for Trump's shooting in Butler. I'm going to tell you what that means when we come back. This again coming from the Washington Post. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
How many times have you tried to clean a stubborn mess but end up with no success? What you need is the all-new waterproof Ruby Horsepower, the new cordless and rechargeable power scrubber that cleans faster and easier, guaranteed. Watch, baked on oven grease is no match. It easily blasts away dirt and grime in no time. The power comes from our rotating brushes spinning at 350 RPM. The incredible torque fights calcium, soap, mildew, mold, and more. Forget harsh chemicals. With just plain water, Horsepower can clean bathroom tiles and tubs back to their original shine and luster. It's a game changer in the kitchen, where it busts through caked-on crud. Take it outside and tackle tough tasks with ease. How strong is Horsepower? We took this distressed 100-year-old antique and restored it to like new with Horsepower. Amazing! Get your Ruby Horsepower scrubber today with bonus scouring sponge for just $39.99. Save on buying batteries. It's powered with the latest rechargeable technology. But wait, you'll also get this stainless steel brush to make range hoods and gas stoves look brand new again. Yours free. And we're not done. You'll get this Smart Flex cone brush that fits perfectly into corners, tiny crevices on toilets and tiles, or hard to reach shower door rails. yours free. And to top it off, we'll include this microfiber cloth to clean delicate surfaces and polish cars sparkling clean. It's also free. Great news! Horsepower is now in stock and ready to ship. But due to high demand, there is a strict limit of 2 per order. Order now.
Call 1-800-980-4241. That's 1-800-980-4241. Or visit horsepowerscrubber.com. So call 1-800-980-4241 now.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. So according to the Washington Post, in the days before Donald Trump's July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, the Secret Service needed a member of its protective detail to develop a security plan. They were stretched so thin that they turned to a junior member of the detail. In the past, you would have had to train new agents in a field office for a minimum of 5 years and have them work at least 2 more in a protective detail before assigning them to oversee such a large public event. But in this case, the agent put in charge of security at Butler had joined the Secret Service just 4 years earlier and only started in the protective detail in 2023, the panel found. There's other lapses there. You can find it for yourself. I know we're running late here, but years of inaction at the Secret Service set the stage for the Trump shooting in Butler. Okay, according to Carol Roth is a former investment banker, entrepreneur, and author of a new book, You Will Own Nothing. Writes, the 3 of the biggest challenges Trump will face trying to fix Biden's mistake. She says spending cuts and the deficit. With a $36 trillion debt load that is above 120% of the GDP and growing at a pace of around $1 trillion every 100 days, and a deficit that is double the historic average in terms of a percentage of the GDP, any spending cuts will require careful choreography. Tools and tactics that may have been able to be used in the past now must be wielded much more carefully. With disruptors Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy heading the Department of Government Efficiency, they will easily be able to identify ample spending and regulatory cuts. However, the execution must be to prioritize those efforts that increase GDP before they cut spending. Massive government deficits have been propping up U.S. GDP. Taking some of that away will immediately do the opposite, lowering GDP. So private sector growth needs to be turbocharged first. Otherwise, if the GDP comes down and we enter a recession, the U.S. will see lower tax revenue, and then we may end up with bigger deficits. Then he's got to focus on oil production. One of Treasury Secretary nominees, Scott Besnet's 3 stool legs for his 3-3-3 economic plan, is unleashing growth by growing our oil production by an incremental 3 million barrels or more per day. And then finally, tariffs versus the dollar. The Trump administration has been focused on both tariffs and weaker dollar, a dynamic that creates a paradoxical challenge. All right. Now, the Rich Lowry had said, and we mentioned, thank you for the last minute waves. Rich Lowry says, forget the H-1B visa spat. And, they keep mentioning this. The media loves this because they think it's a way to hurt Trump and hurt Musk's relationship. They think it's a way to, mock Republicans or mock Trump. That's what we saw from Don Lemon, who was just giddy about it. But over Christmas, Musk and his tech allies started a inter-MAGA debate over recruiting top immigrant talent to the U.S. with the H-1B visa program. Musk is right that we should want to get exceptionally gifted people into the country, and the immigration hawks are right that the H-1B program, which awards temporary visas to skilled immigrants, is scammy and poorly designed. That was a fascinating ideological fight, but it's also over a relatively small-scale program that awards 85,000 visas a year. Left almost entirely unaddressed was the vastness of the rest of our scandalously stupid immigration system. So without getting through the whole idea, because we do have to take another short break, I see some comments and some last-minute waves coming in. But the recent Elon Musk occasioned discussion of H-1Bs aside, the abiding failure of our immigration debate is that too many people take the status quo for granted. They act as if the Statue of Liberty make the rationale for legal immigration. That it's out of bounds. You can't talk about it. The truth is that those who we admit and why are important questions of national policy and should be determined based on the national interest. All right. So we have to take another short break. We'll go through your last minute comments. I find this weird. Supreme Court Justice Chief Justice Roberts, issued a warning on judicial independence weeks before Trump's inauguration. Now, where does this come from? Quote, it's not the nature of judicial work to make everyone happy. Most cases have a winner and a loser. Every administration suffers defeats in the court system, sometimes in cases and major ramifications for executive or legislative power or other consequential topics. Nevertheless, for the past several decades, the decision of the courts, popular or not, have been followed, and the nation has avoided the standoffs that plagued the 50s and the 60s. Within the past few years, however, elected officials from across the political spectrum have raised the specter of open disregard for federal court rulings. These dangerous suggestions, however sporadic, must be soundly rejected. Judicial independence is worth preserving. As my late colleague Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote, an independent judiciary is essential to the rule of law in any land, yet it is vulnerable to assault. It can be shattered if the society law exists to serve does not take care to ensure its preservation. I urge all Americans to appreciate this inheritance from our founding generation and cherish its endurance. I'm not sure if that was kind of a dig at Trump for some reason, kind of confusing. We got a couple of last minute things that we're going to just breeze through, so stay with us. Get your last minute comments in so I can read them before we wrap up the first Frankly Speaking of 2025. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
Whether because of discomfort, lack of mobility, your lifestyle, or occupation, you sit inactively way too many hours a day. Introducing Ellipse, the premium quality automatic seated exerciser that strengthens legs, increases mobility, and boosts circulation without physical strain or impact.
It is so quiet that none of my coworkers even know I'm using it.
Strengthen and tone your legs, increase your mobility, flexibility, and balance. Plus, stimulate healthy circulation.
My joints feel better, my knees feel better, my back feels better. It makes me feel stronger too.
Perfect for home therapy. Whisper quiet to use while you work.
My circulation is moving, I'm burning calories, and it makes me feel energetic.
Call now and order Ellipse, the seated exerciser that strengthens legs, increases mobility, and boosts circulation. Call and get upgraded to the Deluxe Bundle. Get the faster motor for 5 miles of steps per hour, the step counter, the sport mat, and wireless remote. Call now.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Let's go through a couple of comments as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, getting ready to wrap up today's edition of the program. Sergeant Dave writes, it's not the time to play games in D.C. I think that both Trump and Biden should have a joint announcement about the terrorist situation around the country. That would show the world our strength and solidarity against all enemies of our country. That would be a nice symbol. I don't believe, unfortunately, that would happen, for a myriad of reasons. Next up, Ken writes, Ken from Horseheads, Happy New Year to Frank and his viewers. Well, thank you, Ken. Happy New Year to you. May it be a year filled with events that get our country back to being great again and respected in the world. Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate that. I had mentioned, and Happy New Year to you as well. I had mentioned this, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. What they're suggesting at the Wall Street Journal is that this whole generation, American 30-somethings, have bypassed the traditional milestones of adulthood, okay? But economists are warning that that's not just like a fluke or a short-time thing, that it may actually be a permanent state of arrested development. It's just kind of interesting. Your thoughts on that? Okay, I didn't know if I'd have a chance to get to it, but I think it's worth to breeze through this right as we wrap up. The New York Post put together what they call the weirdest and wackiest stories from, hey, Hey, Chris, thanks for the wave, buddy. All right, so the weirdest and wackiest stories of 2024. First off, I guess this is one that we missed, that adultery actually became legal in New York after 117 years. I forgot about that one. This, again, weirdest and wackiest headlines, according to the New York Post. Then you have, remember the people that were digging a hidden tunnel to that Brooklyn synagogue. A group of 13 young Hasidic Jewish students were busted in January for digging a secret tunnel to access a famous synagogue in Crown Heights. We never really heard much more about that. Okay, then you have the one, and this is why I brought it up. It's Peanut the squirrel. Yes, the Instagram famous rescue squirrel right here in Pine City. That was killed off by state officials. That they are considering one of the wackiest and weirdest stories of 2024. Still kind of a topic, something that still comes up. The critter's killing, along with Fred the raccoon, his death, became a rallying cry about government overreach among lawmakers and right-wing celebrities. It came up during the campaign heavily, the Trump campaign. It actually was brought up by Neil Gorsuch from the Supreme Court in a speech that he was giving. Pretty fascinating. Next up, Nathan's hot dog eating contest that was rocked by that cheating scandal. Remember that? That is a wacky, weird headline. Oh, this one is so funny. New York gubernatorial candidate who was roasted for faking their Spotify stats to make it look like he listened to nothing but Bruce Springsteen. Obviously, he's in New Jersey, so he wanted to pretend that he was the most Jersey you could be, and that's Josh Gottheimer. You may know that name. He's a current representative, Josh Gottheimer. He posted a doctor list of his most listened to annual Spotify songs online, falsely claiming all top 5 were Bruce Springsteen. He was accused of fibbing, and he had to own up to it. This was kind of a wacky one, that the tri-state area shook up by the biggest quake in 140 years. Then you had the 70 migrants found sleeping in a cramped New York City basement. That was a big story at the New York Post. And then finally, the Russian stowaway who snuck onto a Paris-bound Delta Airlines flight. All right, I wanted to get to those just quickly. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. Oh, we talk about celebrities so often who were saying, oh, I think I'm done. If Trump gets in there, I'll be arrested. And they're so full of themselves. Well, here's someone we know that's always been full of themselves and very anti-Trump, Kathy Griffin. She tells fans to see her perform, before she's placed in Trump's internment camps, as if she's somewhere relevant. All right, we are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you for all the comments. I didn't know we were all going to be so lively this morning after New Year's. I hope everybody had a great New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. We'll be back on the program tomorrow. As I mentioned, on Monday, we'll have Andy Petros in to talk to us about his upcoming Zoom meeting where you can learn how you can run for office next year. Very heavy local year for elections. So that's on Monday, but tomorrow, just you and I. So make sure you join us every weekday morning starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Look forward to it already.
Are you ready for winter in New York State? Ready for thrills like this? Discoveries like this? Views like this? Are you ready to make memories? Plan the perfect trip or have an impromptu getaway. It's time to explore everything that makes New York easy to love. Discover more at iloveny.com.